Now I will turn to Mr. Ercan Kurkut, who is the brother of Kemal Kurkut. And you are there physically, so I give you the floor, sir.
First of all, I'd like to say hello to the dear members and the participants. My name is Ercan Kurkut. I'm the brother of Kemal Kurkut, who was killed by Turkish police officers during Nevruz in 2017. In 2016, I also had to leave Germany. I had to leave Turkey and go to Germany because I was sentenced for engaging in political activity, so I had to seek refuge in Germany. So first of all, I'll tell you about the event and then go into the details. In 2017, during Nevruz, in the morning hours, my brother Kemal was killed by Turkish police officers. Around 1 or 2 hours later, the governor of Diyarbakir said that a live bomb had been desactivated, had been killed while he was trying to enter the place. And then my other brother, Farhat, was also killed, and his remains were also taken to Malatya, and the funeral took place there. But of course, there are many details I have to tell you about here. So in the morning, after Kemal was killed, the reflex of the police officers of the state was to speak with the cameramen and the journalists and to take away all their cameras, to take away all the photographs these cameramen and the journalists had taken. And so it was easier for them to make the statements later on. It was easier for the state to say what had happened. And the state said that there had been a live bomb, there was going to be a suicide bomber, and that he had been killed. Later on, after we took the corpse of my brother Kemal, we came to Malatya. I'm very sorry. So this was actually Kemal's last journey, and it's still not over for us, actually. So once we arrived in Malatya, the state hospital asked us to establish Kemal's identity, and so my mother had to go from door to door, and she had to give her blood, and finally she did. And finally, 3 hours later, we were able to hand over they finally handed us over his corpse. And the corpse was washed in the morgue, and the municipality actually cut the water that came to the morgue. Later on, we asked for a coffin, but this coffin was refused. We also asked for a tent in which we could mourn, in which we could see the corpse, but they refused us as well. Years ago, we lost our father, Red, years ago, and we wanted to inhume my brother next to my father, but the municipality refused this as well. And one day after Nevruz, in the morning again, a journalist friend of ours who was able to foresee what was going to happen, and I'm really grateful to him, my whole family is grateful to him. And again, I would like to underline how important the free press is. So this friend of mine gave the photographs he's taken to the press and the camera footage, and we saw that what had happened there in Diyarbakir was not a live bomb, was not a suicide bombing, but a murder. And 7 months later, on the 14th of December, and afterwards, I forgot to say, the photographs were published, and 2 police officers were taken under custody. And the first was released the day after, and the second was released only 2 days after. And unfortunately, nothing else could be done about them. They were acquitted, and there were no other witnesses that we could question. On the 14th of December 2017, the court gave their decision, and they prepared an indictment. And this was accepted. And finally, our lawyers, we asked for these 2 police officers to be arrested yet again, but the court refused this. So this court case continued for 3 years until 2020. And there was a single expert report that came to the court. And this confirmed the prosecutor's report. It said that actually these police officers had murdered my brother. But later on, the murderer and his lawyer refused this report, and the court accepted their refusal. So none of our applications were accepted, but the murderer's application, the murderer's demand, was immediately accepted. And this report was again taken back, and then it came back again. But unfortunately, the report was changed in taking into account the murderer's account. And the photographs, the videos that we gave to the court, most of the evidence, all of this evidence that we presented to the court were refused. And finally, the murderer was acquitted because of insufficient proof. But you can see this photo on the screen. If you were to show this photograph to a 5-year-old, he would be able to show you who the murderer was. But there's only a single person who's being judged in this court. And that's my journalist friend who gave these photographs and the footage to the court. There's no one else who's being judged here. Now I'd like to go into the details of the event. Now, in democratic states with rule of law, when there's an event such as this, you'll know it better than I do, of course. I'm not a lawyer. But when there's such an event, when the police officer comes to the place of then the police officer will try to collect all the evidence that there is. But the state actually tries to destroy all the evidence just so we can accept their story that there was a suicide bomber. So there was no questioning. The police officers who collected the evidence there, who confiscated the images, the videos, were not questioned. None of the police officers in Malatya were questioned. My addresses, my residences when I came back to Turkey were all raided because we were trying to do something about my brother's brother. Of course, this was a very difficult process for all of us, especially for my mother. All of us have been living with this violence, the state violence. We grew up under state violence. My other brother was thrown out of his job because of a decree. I was also tortured. The witnesses who you listen to here were tortured as well, and each time I listen to them, it's very difficult for me. My heart aches because we all lived through this. We've all been tortured. We've all been taken under custody. I was also imprisoned for several months. For 8 years, I lived an uncertain life, and I can't even hug my son anymore as I'd like to. My mother and us, we've all been going through hell. The state never tried to give us any psychological support. The state never presented its condolences for our deaths. No, it just continued applying pressure on us. In Kurdistan, we have a saying for the youngest person in the house. The youngest of the house is the happiness, the joy of the house, we say. And Kamal, my brother, was studying musicology. In Kamal's room, he would always be playing the violin. We'd always hear the piano music, violin sounds coming from his room. But they cut off our voice. They silenced us. They killed our enthusiasm. Nothing is as it used to be. And now, all we would want is for there to be no more new Kemals. We want there to be justice. Because this policy of impunity will lead to new murders. We keep saying this. We don't want new Kemals. We can't survive with this kind of pain. No mother, no family, no brother, no one here should have to live with such pain. No one should have to live under state pressure, under state violence. I apologize. This is all I have to say for now. I'm prepared to answer your questions, if any.
Kurkut, for this courageous testimony, and I know it's full of emotion for you, so thank you very much for being here with us and explaining what happened to your brother. we went to break silence. That's exactly the principle of this tribunal. So I will give the floor now to my colleague for some questions. Judge Malin Berny, are you going to start?
Yeah. One question on the circumstances surrounding the murder of your brother. I can read here that the murder happened during festivities. Is it okay? Is it right? So my question is, what could have caused the murder? Maybe some incident between the people during the festivities, or disorders among the people attending these festivities, which have degenerated into a killing.
So, we actually don't know anything about what happened before the murder. As you see in the photos, Kemal has a knife in his hand, but we don't know what happened before he was murdered. But we have a certain theory. Kemal, of course, was confronted with state violence before. A brother of his had been taken under custody, had been imprisoned, had been exiled. Another brother had been kicked out of his job, had been liquidated. So what happened for Kemal, the killings at the Ankara train station were very important. The terror event at Ankara was very important. A close friend of his had been killed, and this had destabilized him. And he had been severely traumatized by this, and after the 12th of October terror event in Ankara, he was followed psychologically. He had some treatment. And so we think that that event on the 12th of October in Ankara was a huge event for him. So later on, maybe in Nevruz, the police asked him to strip down. They wanted to search him, and we think that my brother then panicked and that he was extremely angry, and so he found a knife and then went back towards the festivities. But actually, you can see in the photos he's holding the knife against himself. So maybe he's saying, "If you don't leave me alone, I'll kill myself." But this is what the witnesses there could say. The state isn't saying anything clear about this because the state destroyed all the evidence that was there at the moment. So we don't know what happened before, but this is our theory.
Much. May I give you the floor?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kurkut. I am sure that all of these events were very traumatic. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Kurkut. I appreciate that these events were very traumatic. That is the correct photograph that you are referring to, the one that we have on screen. You know, it'll be terrible. It will be terrible if a guilty person, two murderers, are let off acquitted by a court because the court is dishonest, because of impunity, because the court is not independent. But on the other hand, it would also be terrible for a state where courts find people guilty of murder and sentence them heavily without sufficient proof. And generally, we require proof beyond reasonable doubt. So many murderers, let's just say killers, are acquitted because there is not proof beyond reasonable doubt. So I want to know a little bit more. I don't say that you are wrong at all, but before we can use this case, speaking for myself, before I as a judge can use this case as proof that there is impunity, I need to know a little bit more as to why these two people were acquitted. So I'm asking you, did the court give did the court give reasons for its finding, either orally or in writing? Or did they just say you're acquitted, go home? Did they give reasons?
The court said that there was insufficient evidence. But I'd like to add something here. There isn't only one murder here.
To this one, let's just stick to this one. How did I'm really sorry, but I have to ask this. I was a judge in criminal courts for quite a few years. I sentenced several people to life imprisonment, and I was dead scared as a judge that I would send somebody to prison for life or for several years who is perhaps not guilty. So let's just focus on this, and please bear with me. It's not because I'm unsympathetic. I want to know if we can use this case as a concrete example. All right, the court said no, not sufficient proof. Did it say it just in one sentence, or did it give reasons? Because normally what a court would do is it would go to all the evidence, including the photograph. The court would say, well, on this picture it looks like this, but witness so-and-so said after the photograph something else happened. So did the court give proper reasons, either orally or in writing, for the conclusion that there is not sufficient proof?
So after the first report that was produced, here's what happened. Okay, I'm not going to call him a murderer anymore. It's quite difficult. No.
You are a relative, you are family of the victim, you have suffered a lot of pain. My question is, why did the court not call him a murderer? What was the explanation of the court as to there's no sufficient proof? So perhaps our systems are different. I'm not quite sure what you mean with reports, but was there a judgment? I'm not sure if our translations are correct. Was there a judgment where the court said, for the following reasons, I find this person not guilty of murder, and then say, the photograph shows this, witness A said this, witness B said this, witness C was a liar, and so on? Were there reasons like that given orally or in writing?
No, actually, they didn't bring any details to this. At the last hearing, they said that there was just insufficient evidence, and so they were acquitting the defendants. Because the murderer said that he shot the floor, that he was aimed his bullets at the floor, at the ground. So actually, we don't know who killed Kemal, because all of the two policemen who were taken under custody said that they didn't shoot Kemal. Neither of them accept this. But there are certain policemen who did shoot, but we don't know who shot who.
If you say there was some chaos, people shot, fired. One policeman said, I shot into the ground. That bullet could have ricocheted and killed the deceased. But for murder, you need the intention to kill. So maybe the police said it was an accident. Now, in my legal system, they would still be guilty of something, but not murder. So if you are correct that the court gave no proper reasons, then we are into another problem, perhaps even a more serious problem. Then we don't have legitimate courts in Turkey. That would fall under another topic here. Then we have courts who don't do their work. They just give judgments without giving reasons. I think in most jurisdictions, the only thing that a court can do to justify it, the court does not have an army. The only thing that a court can do for the public to trust it is to give good reasons. So if you say there were no reasons, that in itself is a human rights abuse and an atrocity. If their reasons were one of the several people could have killed him, we do not know who it was, then it might not be so far-fetched that the specific accused was found not guilty. So let me leave it at that. Perhaps with the assistance of your rapporteurs, one could trace this case and see if there is somewhere a written judgment or a recorded judgment. Whether it would be in time for this tribunal, I do not know. But all I'm saying, speaking for myself, before I can make this specific case an example of impunity, I do need to know more about the reasons for the court's finding, or absence of reasons. Thank you very much. Sorry for the long speech.
No, and just concurring with that, because we have many cases at the European Court of Human Rights concerning Turkey, to somebody against Turkey, and finding that there is no proper reasoning of the court, and they were acquittal of many, many people who have an important, robust case law on that. And the court found at the end of the day a violation of Article 2, right to life, of Article 3, a prohibition of torture and inhuman and degrading treatment, independent of the situation. So not giving a reasoning, a proper reasoning to an acquittal of police forces or other agents, it in itself a violation of the right to life. That's why I really would like to concur with your question. It's so important. It's so important. The police cannot say no. We cannot say, well, it's an acquittal without any reasoning, explaining on the face of the situation, of course, which are the reasons for this acquittal. So I will give the floor to you, George Baninverdi, because you asked.
Yes, I have a further question in relation to the one that our colleague posed. You say the two defendants, two soldiers or two military gendarmes, have been acquitted. This tribunal who acquitted the two defendants was a first instance tribunal? And if yes, did you try to apply to a second instance to have tribunal to have a more motivated judgment? Or did you stop the procedure after the acquittal given by the first instance tribunal?
No, we continued the procedures, and now we're waiting for a decision that will come from the Court of Cassation. So the Court of Cassation will deliver its decision, and then we'll have exhausted all internal possibilities in Turkey, and then we'll go to another court. So the first report that we submitted, that the court submitted, said that the prosecutor's indictment was right. They justified it. So the state's motivation was based on not bringing any evidence, on not bringing any light onto this event. So from the moment this happened, the policemen entered the place where the Nevruz festivities were taking place and confiscated all cameras and cameras. And that's when we lost all confidence in the judiciary, because nothing happened about these police officers, nothing happened about the governorship in Malatya, nothing. There's not a single prosecution that's going on, and no one has been interrogated. And normally the court should have, the prosecutor should have gone into all of this, should have prosecuted all this, should have looked into all these evidence. So now we're waiting for the decision that will come from the Court of Cassation, but we've lost all confidence in the Turkish judiciary. And Kemal is not the last example. There were many other things, other people who were prosecuted before, who were killed before Kemal. Of course, Kemal was, the story of Kemal was well explained on the media, but you can look at what happened in Gezgin. There was Berkin, Ali Esmail, Mustafa Sarısülük, Ethem Sarısülük. They were also killed at Gezi. Just in the recent weeks, a child called Miras, I don't remember where in Turkey, but he was killed by a panzer. By his panzer division, because the policemen in that region are so comfortable, they're so sure that they'll never be punished, that they can do anything they like. For them, it's really easy to kill people.
judiciary, when we lose confidence in the judiciary, it's a real problem. Very.
Thank you, Madam President. I had two questions, but the first of those I'll not put it because the case is before the cassation court, so I don't consider it appropriate. My second question is, was this photograph published before the trial at the first instance court and the appeal by any newspapers, social media? And was it public, let's say, and judges who decided on this case had the possibility as well to see it beside the proceedings?
Yes, this photo was published one day after Nevruz, one day after the event. Not only this photo, my dear journalist friend published around 8 or 9 photos, and the prosecutor also put Abdurrahman Gök, the photographer, on the witness stand, and they added these photographs in the file, in the case file. And there was also a video where we can hear the policemen talking amongst each other. When the policemen were standing in front of a police car, we can hear a policeman saying he didn't need to kill the guy. He says he didn't need to kill the guy. And so we can see the photographs here, and we gave them all to the prosecutor, but unfortunately, we weren't able to have a just hearing. And finally, the people were acquitted.
Judge Bayens, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have two clarifying questions. The first one is, did you receive back the body of your brother? Did your family, was his body returned to the family?
Yes, we were able to get it, but as I said, they made us wait. It was a sort of torture that they made us submit to for 3 hours in the hospital. So my mother, first of all, had to go to a certain office to give her blood, and they said, no, it's not here, it's another office. So she had to go to another office, another office, another office. And a mother who's just lost her son had to go from door to door, and they were just playing games with her. They were playing around with her pain. And 3 hours later, we were finally able to take my brother's remains.
And then the other question is, you mentioned that the journalist that took and published the photos has been himself been subject to charges, and is he facing prosecution, and what charges were brought against him? If you could clarify, that would be.
Yes, my journalist friend Abdurrahman, right after the events, he started being pressurized by the police. His house was raided 2 or 3 times. His house was just nearly destroyed inside. Once they raided when he wasn't home. And he was taken under custody. And right now, they're asking for 20 years of imprisonment. But actually, I don't know what the indictment is exactly. But Abdurrahman Gök, after that event, was brought to the forefront. They started to bring him. They had other motivations about him.
We'll turn to Judge John Pache. Do you have any question?
President, if I may, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Kurkut, I would like to ask you, this incident took place in Diyarbakir, right?
Evet.
Yes.
And it took place in 2017.
Evet, 2000
Yes, in 2017.
Was there any similar incident in that town before, in other years before, or since? I want to have an idea of the kind of temperature in the town, generally speaking. Did you get my question?
anladım.
Yes, I have. I understood your question. Yes, in the preceding years, during preceding Nevruz festivities, of course, we always came under state pressure, but I'm not sure right now. I can't tell you if there were other murders, if other such events took place. But in Diyarbakir, every Nevruz, there's always a big state pressure, police pressure. But whether there was murder or not, I really can't say right now. I don't know.
I'm not limiting myself to murder. I'm more looking at the general environment, whether it has been traditionally tense or there was frequent or unusual police presences. And was it just because of the festivity of Nevruz, or was it symptomatic of policy by the authorities, perhaps, which was aimed at maybe controlling or otherwise discouraging manifestations of the kind? But as I understand it, Nevruz is quite a traditional festival, isn't it?
Yes, Nevruz is the national festivity of the Kurdish people. It's not only in Turkey, it's also in northern Iraq, in Rojava, in Iran. It's a very important festivity. But in Turkey, every Nevruz festivity, it's not only in Diyarbakir, but generally, in all of the region of Kurdistan, there's a huge pressure during Nevruz. They try to prohibit Nevruz, they try to create sabotage about Nevruz. They always try to create obstacles surrounding our Nevruz festival. This has actually become a tradition. The state pressure and police pressure has become a matter of tradition around Nevruz because they do not want, they can't stand it that the Kurds have their own festivities.
Yes, so my final question in that case is, since we don't have or seem to have any record of similar serious killings taking place during Nevruz, was there any particular reason why on this particular date in 2017 the situation reached these serious limits? If the police have controlled these festivities before and since, how come they ended up killing a young person just like that? Did they shoot at people before, for example? Or were weapons used before? Or was this an exceptional situation on that particular day in 2017? Or was it normal, a normal kind of repression of sorts?
Under normal circumstances, I really don't know. I don't know. I have no information about this. Did the previous years, did they use arms? I really don't know. But generally, when the Kurds have hold certain events, whether it's Nevruz or other events, of course the police are armed. This is a normal thing for it to happen. If the Kurds have a certain event and the police are present, well, then they'll be armed because, of course, arms are there to frighten people and to incite them to be and to intimidate people.
Okay, thank you very much. I understand that it is a period of high confrontation, and in this particular case, that confrontation led to this kind of unjustifiable violence, if you like. Thank you very much. That's my impression.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presence with us today and for the collaboration to the work of this tribunal. So thank you very much.